Today I'm talking about something that you may not be that familiar with, although you may have come across it over on TikTok, especially in the last few years. You may have seen a handful of people talking about topical steroid withdrawal and the pretty harsh realities of how painful and life-changing the condition can be. And especially if you're on the skincare side of TikTok, then you've probably seen a notable rise in the number of people talking about topical steroid withdrawal, or maybe you've seen articles about celebrities like Naomi Scott and Anthony Lexa suffering with the condition in very recent years. For many of us, these stories that the people with the conditions are sharing and their experiences can be pretty terrifying. They seem to be becoming more and more common. And that's not because it's terrifying to see, it's terrifying to think that that can one day possibly happen to us, or if you suffer from anything like eczema, it could be you. So today I want to talk about the condition in a little bit more detail and in an attempt to raise awareness further and let people know that if they're suffering from this, or if you think you're suffering from this, that you are not alone. As part of my research into this topic, I interviewed my friend and fellow skincare creator James Atkinson, who has himself been suffering from the condition and has been sharing his journey on TikTok and Instagram like many others. But before we get into the interview and James's personal experiences, let's talk about exactly what topical steroid withdrawal actually is, how controversial it is, because some of you may not have heard about it before, and even if you have, there does seem to be a lot of misinformation and confusion surrounding what it is and if it's even real. So obviously we've done some research on this, and I'm not going to be talking about this obviously as a doctor, as you know, but this is what topical steroid withdrawal supposedly is. And listen, I'm just going to cut a long story short here. I believe topical steroid withdrawal is a thing, but I have to talk about it skeptically for a reason you're going to see why in a minute. Topical steroid withdrawal is supposedly a condition that some people develop after using topical steroids for a prolonged period of time, like months or years, and then they will suddenly stop using the steroid or drastically reduce using the steroid of these products, and they'll develop this withdrawal. It comes out in rashes, sores, painful weeping sores. Images like these two give you a good indication to what topical steroid withdrawal can look like. Although there have actually been some reports that you can still experience the symptoms whilst still actively using topical steroids, and some people seem to develop the condition after only using them for a very short amount of time, as little as a couple of weeks. So it's all quite confusing and not very well defined at the moment, which is a huge part of the problem, as you'll see later in the video. The condition also goes by a few different names, which again doesn't help the situation. There's topical steroid withdrawal, or TSW, red skin syndrome, red burning skin syndrome, steroid dermatitis, topical steroid rebound phenomena, and the list goes on, which doesn't help make things clear for people who think they may be suffering from this. Now, if you've seen any of the stories and videos online about the issue, you've probably seen just how scary the condition can actually be. This isn't just the return of eczema, it goes way beyond that. Many people suffering from it often experience a strong burning sensation, redness of the skin, oozing or weeping, swelling, flaking and peeling skin, hair loss, fatigue, anxiety and depression, a bone-deep itch that's impossible to get rid of, and even insomnia because it's hard to sleep when you're in that amount of pain and discomfort. So how does this even start? There's a good chance that a fair few of us have used a topical steroid at some point in our life. They're pretty regularly prescribed by doctors to treat conditions like eczema, psoriasis, and dermatitis. If you've had a rash or severe dry skin at some point, you've probably been told to use a topical steroid to clear it up. And some weaker versions of topical steroids are even available to buy without prescription. That's how commonplace they actually are. Now, I don't want to fearmonger here. Of course, in these kind of percentages, you're probably going to be absolutely fine to use these. I don't want to spread misinformation. This video is purely sharing findings from the online world. So you might be wondering how something so commonly used that seems to work so well for so many people could end up causing such horrifying issues. So let's go over to the interview with James Atkinson, which I'll be playing in and out of this commentary, and just see how it all began for him. Obviously, what happened to you isn't something that just happened overnight. Is it something you've experienced in the past, and is that kind of what got you into skincare, or are they completely not related?
Yeah, so I've had eczema for my whole life. My mum's had like rosacea. She's like had skin conditions. We've got skin conditions all through the family, but mine was eczema, and I've had it my whole life. And it was treated using topical steroids when I was younger, and it was kind of just manageable because eczema is one of those things that is very dependent on so many factors that you kind of have to learn to manage it rather than cure it. And so I was managing it absolutely fine. And say like changing weather, it would cause me to flare up. And I get it on like the heat patches. So like here, behind my leg, behind my knee, sort of like here by my neck. And that's what made me go into skincare, absolutely, because I was kind of looking, I was finding it really hard because I was waiting to see a derm on the NHS, and it was such a long time when I was younger that I just started doing the research myself and looking at ingredients myself and looking at products myself. And that kind of just led me to like find a community on Instagram and find an online community. And that's kind of where I thought, oh, I could talk about this and might help someone or whatever. So yeah, I did that, and that's a full-time job now, which is lovely. One of the first brands that kind of took a punt on me was Liz Earle. Liz Earle from Boots.
No way.
Yeah, they my mum was like, forget everything, cleanse and polish it up, heal you. And I was like, okay, mum, you're right. But she swore by it, and so many people swore by it. I was like, okay, it's like some cult. And then it's not. And then I reached out to them and said, I just want to tell you about my success with this product. And they were like, have you got a job? Their reply was, have you got a job? And I was like, yeah, I've got a job. I was a student. And they said, we want you on counter talking about these products because the way that you talk about them is so authentic. And then I went down and met the team, and they kind of listened to me a bit more with my skin, I think. And it was an amazing product at the time. I think it's been reformulated quite a bit, but at the time it was incredible for my skin. And yeah, so they were one of the first brands. So when I hear people not hate on, but say that they don't like Liz Earle, I'm like, they've got a little soft spot in my heart.
They're like a legacy brand. They're a classic. And that polished product will always be loved because so many people love it, and it does just work. Like it's a great product. It also comes with a free
muslin cloth.
Muslin cloth. You mentioned about the dermatologist. Whenever I see comments online, I don't think people realize from other countries, especially America, how difficult it is to see a dermatologist in the UK. So I had acne when I was younger, so did my brother. And I feel like with conditions like eczema as well, we see a doctor who I would say doesn't necessarily specialize in that subject, but they kind of know what to prescribe you rather than really paying attention to your condition, your skin, and having that expertise like a dermatologist does. So a lot of us end up just going on, I was on something called Zineret, I think it was called at the time, which, was your standard kind of like Accutane kind of thing. Was that kind of the same with you? You said you were waiting for an NHS dermatologist. You ended up seeing a dermatologist?
I ended up seeing a dermatologist, who prescribed me the exact same thing that my GP prescribed me. And this is the thing, I think, because obviously we are very lucky to have a system where we can go and see a GP and we can go and see a doctor for free, but they are that. They're a general practitioner. They have to know little bits of everything, but they don't know a lot about, especially something as like complex as skin. So when you go, they're kind of just almost covering up, sort of like getting you through until you see someone that has got more knowledge. Right? And that is no one's fault. It's just the way that it is. That time between seeing a GP and seeing a derm, your condition can get worse. But there's no alternative unless you go private. So it is one of those catch-22s that you do have to sort of go through. And seeing a derm, I mean, I was back on with the NHS waiting to see a derm, and they'd given me like 16 weeks a wait time. And I remember my DMs at the time, they were like, wow, you're lucky up north because in London, it's about 3 years. And that is just insane to me, to think that you can live with this condition there. And I say this all the time, people trivialize skin conditions because they think it's just a skin condition. They think it's vain, right? It's very much not, as we know. 3 years, some people, it's like, oh, well, if you've got spotty skin, you'll be all right with it for 3 years. And it's like, no, it's not that at all. So yeah, that was really eye-opening when people were saying to me in their DMs, like, 16 weeks is nothing. That is amazing. And I was thinking, God, 16 weeks? But yeah, it is very, very difficult if you don't go private in the NHS to see a derm, because there just isn't enough of them. And when I was talking to like the team, up north here, the dermatology team, they were saying there just isn't enough of them. People don't go into dermatology, and if they do, they don't stay with the NHS, they go private.
You were prescribed something.
Yes.
You mentioned that was a steroid. Mm-hmm. Is that a steroid cream?
Yes, steroid cream at first. So hydrocortisone, which is usually the one that everyone gets. You can get it over the counter, and it's usually 1%. 1% hydrocortisone, and it's like a miracle cream. You put it on any sort of rash or anything, and it clears up overnight. It's incredible. After a while, that stopped working. So I went back, whilst waiting for the derm, I went back to my GP and said, this has stopped working. So they gave me something called Betnovate, which is the highest strength steroid cream, I believe. Well, it's like an ointment, it's like a thick gel. They said, don't put that on your face. You can put it everywhere else, but keep hydrocortisone on your face, put Betnovate anywhere else, and use it whenever you want, however much you want, until it's healed. So I was using it, and then like if I got like a little bit on my neck, I'd put a bit there, or behind my ears, I'd get it. And it worked. It got rid of it. Then that stopped working. So I then went on to oral steroids, which I can't remember the name. It was just like the bog standard lowest dose oral steroids. It was like a 4 or 5 day course, totally cleared up. Brilliant. And then they just said, use the Betnovate and the hydrocortisone whenever you need to sort of manage it. And because I'd had my whole life managing it, I was like, okay, this is how I'm now going to manage it. That was kind of where I was for the longest time. You know, I would still get these flare-ups, but would have like this arsenal of creams and stuff that I would use. And then in between that, I would always moisturize my skin with Nivea. Was a brilliant one. I don't know, Nivea Soft was fantastic, and still is. And then just a thick ointment. So it was like white paraffin, essentially, that I would just cover my body and my face in if I flared up. And that's how I just managed for the longest time. For about a year, I wasn't getting any flare-ups. And I think it was because a lot changed in my life and I wasn't as stressed. Because stress is a massive thing with any skin condition. I was like, oh, this is good. I'm not as stressed. I'm all right now. Maybe I've healed it because I'm not stressed. And then obviously it all flared up last year. Crazy.
So you say years, like, so you were on this kind of like forever. It was like a permanent thing. Yeah. So you took your oral medication, it calmed down a bit. And then were you just constantly applying the cream as of when you needed it for the rest of your life up till now?
Yeah, 8 years. So I was 8 years old, sorry. I was 8 years old. I'm 28 now. My whole life, that's all I remember. Literally all I remember is having in my bedside table and on my bedside table, these creams, having these creams that I would just put on. And it was just like a habit. I knew, and like if I ever went anywhere, it'd be the first thing that I packed. It was just part of my life. But so many people like that have eczema are like that, right? They have this cream, they just apply it, they're like, God, I couldn't go anywhere without that because I never know when my skin's going to flare up. So this year is like 20 years that I've been using topical and some oral steroids.
So as we just seen in James's case, he started using topical steroids because his doctor told him to do so, not just because he felt like it. I don't think anybody starts using it just because they're like, oh, this will do. And he progressed to stronger and stronger versions of it because, again, that's what his doctors told him to do. And as far as he was aware, this was perfectly normal. It was just the way things worked. And he wasn't made aware of any major side effects or the risks that might come with stopping these products. And this is the case for a lot of people suffering from skin conditions that are treated using topical steroids. Almost everyone you talk to agrees that they were never really told that they could potentially develop an even worse condition from long-term topical steroid use. Their doctors prescribe them increasingly stronger topical steroids over months, years, or even decades. So they use them, which is fine because why wouldn't you, right? It's your doctor. If they work and your doctor tells you to keep using them, why would you stop? Well, if we go back to the interview with James, we can see why he actually eventually stopped using topical steroids on a regular basis. And again, this is a similar story to many people who live for so long with conditions like eczema, psoriasis, and dermatitis.
Did you find, like you mentioned, you had a few products, like the Nivea cream worked great for you. Did you find that the more your knowledge of skincare kind of grew, that you were managing it more and more?
Yeah.
And did that lead to you eventually stopping everything?
When I kind of learned about barrier, like your skin barrier, I mean, it's a buzzword now, isn't it? And well, it has been for a couple of years, but I think in lockdown, before then, no. Before then, I thought this is totally separate. Like having a skincare routine and having eczema is very different and very separate. And the only way I can manage it is through these medicated creams. Then I found out about barrier, like skin barrier and stuff. And it was actually Bioma that Mark, who owns Bioma, I had a call with him and he was like, we can see that everyone's messing up the barrier function of their skin. We want to get loads of like content creators on a call and educate them about skin barrier. And he was kind of like for me, one of the first people to be like, this is going to be a thing because everyone's ruining their skin in lockdown. Other than it being a marketing buzzword, it's really important that people understand their barrier. And for me, it was like a light switch because I was like, eczema is just a damaged barrier. And it is to a degree, it is just the top layer of your skin. So when I'm putting these thick layers on, these thick greasy layers, it's because I'm kind of putting an artificial layer on my skin that isn't there because I've got eczema. So it was kind of all making sense a little bit, which was great. And then I would kind of look for the ceramides, look for the Centella asiatica. Beta glucan's brilliant for my skin. I love it loads. There's a mist that I use and it's great and it literally calms my skin down within like 10 minutes. So all of these things, yeah, I was kind of able to manage it a little bit more, but it was still very separate. When I had a flare up, I'd be like, no, the only thing that can sort this is steroids.
When it comes to barrier function, one of the key things for me that has helped make my rosacea manageable is just barrier care. Like you say, it's kind of like become a buzzword, but it's because no one knew it existed pre-COVID.
That's it, yeah.
Like people just say, oh, their skin's destroyed because they stripped it, but nobody really knew what that meant or what
exactly
was going
this,
on.
yeah.
And I do think it has really helped a lot of people kind of like manage certain skin conditions.
Yeah.
There was a time when you were taking and applying nothing.
Yeah.
And how long was that? Like, what made you stop everything?
Because my skin was good.
Good.
So my skin was good. I wasn't stressed. It was literally like end of 23 into 24. My skin was absolutely, I was like, oh my God, it's brilliant. I'd get the odd breakout, but I would be so excited when I got a breakout because my skin is so dry that I would never get a breakout. And when I did, I'd be like, oh my God, my skin's got oil. I'd be like, yeah, so happy. And it's the thing, like I speak to people who have eczema and they're like, oh my God, I love it when I get a breakout because it means that my skin is like functioning properly. So I think like end of 23 to 2024, I wasn't applying anything. It was all good. My skin was great. A lot of like lifestyle things that I think contributed to that. But I would say for a good year, I wasn't applying anything. I was just moisturizing and using skincare as I would normally, and everything was fine.
Obviously, that's a good thing because it means your skin is in a good place. What are the side effects, I guess you can say, if any, of applying these creams, the oral medication? Does it do anything to your skin? Because I know a lot of the, like, for example, the acne stuff that I used to use and I was just given by a GP. Yes, it got rid of my acne, but the scarring was terrible. The red, like, kind of spots it left. Do these steroid creams have the same kind of thing where it's just trying to clear you of the condition and the appearance, or does it not care about the appearance? You know, what are these side effects?
Yeah, so the side effects are your skin becomes reliant on them because what happens is it's like a plaster. The steroid creams especially, literally just they're a anti-inflammatory, like a suppressant. So they just suppress what's there. So your eczema hasn't gone away, it's just been suppressed. Then as a result though, you see that it's gone and you're like, yes, it's gone. And then you're not as stressed because you haven't got it. Because stress is so related, you then, when you get it again, it might not be as much because you're not stressed about it. So they do work to an extent, but I think they're the thing that everyone goes to straight away when they have eczema. and they rely on them so heavily that your skin can become reliant on them. The way that your skin, the barrier function of your skin needs a steroid to suppress inflammation so that it can work normally. That's the side effect to it. There isn't side effects in terms of like dry, like with like Roaccutane or whatever, there's severe dryness. There isn't anything like that. It is, it's a miracle. When I said earlier, it feels like a miracle cream because it literally does what it's supposed to do. It does what it's supposed to do and what the doctors told you it's going to do, which is clear up your eczema. And it does. But then your eczema comes back because your skin's going, hold on, where's my steroids gone? I need my steroids, so it's not suppressed anymore. So it's going to flare back up. And then you put steroids on it, and then it flares back up. This sort of like suppressing and it flaring up is kind of how people live until they see a dermatologist. Because the wait is so long, and GPs, like I said before, they're so stretched that they have to just do what they've been told and say, put this on, take this. This is the advice we've been given. It's the advice we're giving to you. And you will be okay until you see a dermatologist, however long that is. So in terms of side effects, it is just that you can become reliant on them. But people don't know that. And this is the thing. So people see it as a miracle cream. And they just think when their skin flares up again to just apply more because it worked last time.
Going back a bit, so when you were given this prescription cream, the orals, everything, how much information were you told about this being a lifelong thing? Like, were you kind of known that, you're going to have to be on this until you get the proper help? Or because it sounded like a little bit like, take this, use this, it's fine.
Exactly that. It is exactly, just put this on. The side effects aren't spoken about. The way that they get around that is that it's on the box. So it is on the box somewhere. So you should have known. And I remember when last year when my skin went really bad, which we'll get onto, but my mum held so much guilt because she was like, I told you to put these creams on. Like, it was me. And I was like, but you were following a GP's advice. It wasn't like you just picked them up from AliExpress and gone, oh, I'll try that. It was something that had been prescribed by a medical professional. So yeah, nothing was said.
So all that seems perfectly understandable to me. Nobody wants to stay on medication that they don't need. So if you're managing to control your skin condition in other ways, like developing a better skincare routine and reducing stress in your life, then of course, you're going to stop using topical steroids if you don't seem to need them anymore. The thing is, if James and all the other people who believe they suffered from topical steroid withdrawal had known of the potential risks, they might not have stopped using topical steroids so quickly, might not have used them for so long, or might not have even started using them in the first place, especially if they know just how painful, scary, and life-changing the condition could be. Here's what James had to say about when he first noticed that something felt different this time. Like, it wasn't just a normal flare-up for him, how the symptoms progressed and how quickly it took over his life.
So let's get on to 2024, right?
Yeah.
When you've stopped using all your prescription, you stopped using your creams, you weren't taking oral medication, right, either. You were like done and you're happy with your skincare. What were the first signs that this was coming back, but it was different? Like, this time around, it just all went to shit.
So I'd just been to Glastonbury and I got back from Glastonbury. I had just got with my partner and I went back to his and sat on his bed. My face, all over my eyes, I got eczema for the first time, and I never used to get it around my eyes. I was like, that's weird. And then it started on my arms, literally throughout the day, started on my arms. But on my arms, it would feel wet. And I would be like, okay, this feels different. And I would just be absolutely exhausted. Exhausted. And I was thinking, that is just because I've been to Glastonbury. I'd been living it up in Glastonbury. The difference was that it was wet and it was extremely hot, and how quickly it spread. From hour to hour, my skin would just flare. It was flaring around my eyes so aggressively. It was flaring on my neck so aggressively. And then the morning after, I woke up and I was bleeding all on my neck because in the night I had just scratched off the top layer of skin and it was just bleeding. And I was like, oh my God. And I'd had a bit of bleeding behind my ears before with eczema, and that freaked me out. Topical steroid withdrawal was a thing on TikTok and people were talking about it. And I remember years ago when my skin was bad, I remember thinking, that must be the worst thing that you can go through. To have topical steroid withdrawal, which just looks like eczema, pardon the pun, on steroids. I was like so scared of that. I left my partners and went back home. I was just absolutely wiped, like completely wiped. I didn't want to eat anything. I was just everywhere, itching absolutely everywhere, to the point where I was like digging into my skin to try and get to the bone. It felt like the itch was on the bone. It was like, this is different. I need to go and see my GP. So I went to see my GP, and she very luckily was in the know when it come to skincare, because she liked skincare and she followed people on TikTok, and she said, I can't say professionally what I think this is. She said, but I think I've seen it on social media and I don't want to give you steroids. And I went, okay. And I rang my boyfriend. We've been together like 2 months. And I said, just so you know, I don't think this is going to be a short journey. And I need to tell you that because I don't want to sign you up for something that you may not be aware of. And I literally thought, this is going to be me now for quite a while because of what I'd seen on social media. When the penny dropped, I was like, oh my God, I think I've got topical steroid withdrawal. Finding help for that felt like literally stabbing in the dark. I didn't know where to look, where to begin, or whatever. Luckily, there's a really good community online, but the images that you see online are insane. They're totally horrific. So when you're at the beginning of it, you think, that can't be me. I can't be like that. I can't end up like that. And it's just the inevitable that I went on this journey and did, which is absolutely crazy to say. And the itch was bone deep. It wasn't just my skin, it was bone deep. Like I remember getting a knife and itching my skin with a knife because I couldn't get to the itch, and it'd be bleeding and I'd just keep going. It's like you possessed.
I didn't realise how intense yours was gonna get, because it's not something I know. I'm not that on side of TikTok. I've heard of topical steroid withdrawal on and off. I remember seeing you talk about, you think something's going on, to then all of a sudden seeing you on that post you posted where it's just everywhere. It's everywhere. I know you for skincare. I know you for deal with skin, whatever. It just looked like it had taken over so quickly. Like, what was that timeline from Glastonbury? Like months, weeks, days?
About 3 months where it was everywhere. It was absolutely everywhere. The only place I didn't have it was on my feet, which is so bizarre. Wow. The only place. Like skin would just come off me. Because you hear so many things. I remember Robert saying to me that you should try salt therapy. And I'd heard this. So I went to somewhere, and I travelled to like Northampton or somewhere, because it was the nearest place, to sit in this bloody office room. It was so weird. Sit in this office room on an office chair. And she was like, right, I'm going to start it now. She wasn't northern, don't know that. She was like, right, I'm going to start it now. She just pressed this button and it went, and I thought nothing was happening. But I looked down at my shoes and they were covered in salt. And it was just salt being pumped out into the air. And salt was meant to be healing for eczema. Calmed down for about a day. And then it flared straight back up. 3 months, I think I was totally unrecognisable. I would go on holiday because people were saying the sun, you need to get the sun. I remember Caroline Hiron saying to me, you need to go away and get some sun. So I went and stayed in this lovely place. And I would literally be so scared of going out in the sun because my skin was so sensitive that I would go like that and I'd be tanned because it like burn. And I remember going to bed and looking in the mirror thinking, I've got a bit of a tan, thinking, oh, I look all right, The next morning, all of the skin that was tanned was in the bed and it had all come off. And there was just piles, this is horrific, of skin that would just come off. And me and my friend Ash, like she used to joke about it. She used to be like, imagine getting a tan and it literally shedding off you. It's a bit embarrassing, isn't it? I was like, so, because I'd actually be like, let's see your tan, and I'd just send her a photo of the floor. I'm like, no. And I'm saying this, very lucky to have friends that you can be like that with, and very lucky to be in an industry where I've got such incredible powerhouses around me, like Caroline, that can give advice on something that no one knows too much about, right? There isn't much, if any, research on topical steroid withdrawal. So having people like that to say, maybe do this, I was really thankful for. It swelled my head. My head was swollen. My hair, believe it or not, I lost more hair. My hair went back like to here. My eyes were just so puffy, and I would get conjunctivitis every 2 weeks because all of the flakes of skin would go in my eyes, and I'd wake up and I couldn't open my eye, and I'd have to sleep with tissue around here and around here. Worst thing about the whole of it was the weeping. I would be soaking wet. I could literally go like that and it would just be water, well, whatever it is, on my skin. When I was like that, I went to A&E at one point because it was just not stopping and I didn't know what to do. And they offered me a Piriton. I was sat in a grey tracksuit and I wanted it to be grey. I wanted it to be light coloured so they could see the weeping through it. So I didn't have to take it off. And it was just all down here, all over here. I waited 4 hours and she said, we can offer you a Piriton. And I remember literally like wanting to scream. And it's obviously not her fault. But you know when you think, how is this happening? And no one knows how to sort it. Like, it is absolutely insane. And that narrative of people not being listened to or heard was becoming more and more apparent the more that I was speaking to people online and the more that I was kind of like trying to do research myself, because I thought, well, I've done it before. I've done research before myself to help my eczema. Maybe I could do it again, but it was just a whole different ballgame. And it was literally a horror film. It felt like a horror film. My mum would sleep outside my bedroom, because she would just be scared that something would happen in the night. It was literally like hell on earth for so long.
Now, I'm sure you'll agree, all that sounds pretty terrifying. The symptoms themselves sound awful, but it's also just how quickly TSW can completely change your life. That's so scary, so scary. And I don't think it's just because I'm into skincare and how this would change my life when it comes to work, just like James, but how quickly this can take over. And as you might have noticed, James alluded to, what makes it even worse is that once you develop topical steroid withdrawal and you have to deal with all these awful symptoms, on top of that, it can often be difficult, if not impossible, to get a doctor to diagnose you with it and to get appropriate treatment for the condition. And this is where I've been trying to be careful with my words, because the reason it's so difficult to get treated for this or diagnosed with this is because the majority of doctors and the medical community in general seem to not even believe topical steroid withdrawal actually exists. There seems to be two different camps despite real life experiences of so many people. So why are doctors so skeptical? Well, if you watch some of the videos that people have made talking about their experiences with topical steroid withdrawal, you'll notice that almost every single person has struggled to get a diagnosis from their doctor. And to be fair to the doctors, and why I've been so careful with my language, is that there is a reason for this. Until very, very recently, there has been no official diagnosis criteria for topical steroid withdrawal. The term itself isn't a medical one. It's actually one that patients have come up with themselves to explain what they're going through. The trouble is that the symptoms of TSW don't fit neatly into the medical definition of what withdrawal is or looks like. So a lot of doctors are reluctant to use that term and reluctant to see it as a separate condition. Recently, there have been some changes around the guidelines in order to help clinicians at least start identifying potential cases. We'll get into that a little bit later. But before that, doctors were pretty much left guessing with no agreed upon kind of checklist of diagnoses, you know, to say like, yes, this is TSW, or no, this is just severe eczema or some other known skin condition. That's because the symptoms are often very similar to other skin conditions. Severe eczema, allergic contact dermatitis, even skin infections can all cause redness, swelling, burning, and oozing. So from a doctor's point of view, it's really hard to separate what might be TSW from what might just be the really bad flare-up of something else. And the appropriate treatment would differ depending on what the correct diagnosis is. And that's another big part of this problem. The topical steroids have been so widely used and are pretty much so effective for the most part that so many doctors are reluctant to accept that there might be a problem with prescribing them so often, because it's usually their first line of defense against a wide range of skin issues. There's a genuine worry in the medical community that acknowledging TSW too broadly could lead to untreatment of eczema. If patients with serious chronic eczema suddenly swear off steroids completely, the risk can be huge, such as severe infections, scarring, and even hospitalization. So from their perspective, steroids are still the most effective and accessible treatment. So they worry that focusing too much on TSW could do more harm than good. But that caution and lack of guidelines means that people with TSW are suffering because they're the ones being undertreated or mistreated. There may be difficulties for doctors when it comes to diagnosing and treating TSW, but it means that the patients are the ones that suffer. Here's what James said about his experience trying to get a diagnosis and appropriate treatment for the condition, how others have turned to social media for help where their doctors have basically failed them, and how there doesn't seem to be a clear way forward for people suffering with TSW.
How often was the term topical steroid withdrawal used by the professionals that you were seeing? Did any of them say, this is what we think it is, or is it a strict, don't talk about it?
It's a strict, don't talk about it. They would agree with it without saying that they agree with it. They would say, I believe you're right, but they would never diagnose it. I haven't got a diagnosis on paper that says it's topical steroid withdrawal, and I don't think you ever will. There's a couple of places worldwide where it's recognised, one of which is Thailand. I've heard from people that have literally upped their families and moved to Thailand because they are being listened to.
Over there, it's recognised as an actual condition.
Yeah, and there is treatment over that. I mean, TikTok, as we both know, is an absolute shitstorm of bad information, right? But for this, it has saved people's lives because it has brought light to something that people just didn't know what the hell was going on. Because before then, people just thought, what is going on with my body? That was me before I kind of admitted to myself that it was topical steroid withdrawal. I was like, what the hell? I'm not in control of my body. And it's a really scary thing. But it's just wild to think that nobody recognises it. And there will be a time, I truly, truly think that there will be a time in the future where it will be a specialist subject and there will be people who are trained for it. My DMs are full of people that are saying they're scared that they've got it. They're worried that they've got it. And they're sending me photos of their skin. And I can't comment because I can't say, you know, I can't say, I don't know, I'm not trained. But like, it's like, what do you say to them? Go and see your GP? What, for your GP to give you steroid cream? So wait 3 years to see a dermatologist?
Before chatting with you now, I was looking on your socials and I was looking on other TikTokers, Instagrammers who are saying they have this. Like you say, if you have like, oily skin, you go on TikTok, best things for oily skin, and you can kind of give yourself a timeline and kind of like a structure of what you need to do to control that. And it's very similar. Do you know what I mean? Like everyone with oily skin pretty much does the same. You know, I know our skin's all different, but there's a system, right? And I was looking at all these stories, I was looking at your stories, I was looking at other people's. It's like this.
Yeah.
There's no, like if I had it, I'd look at all these stories and I'd be like, I still don't know what to do. Like, what am I going to do? It doesn't feel like there's an end to this.
This is it. You would go from being able to go out and, you know, go for dinner somewhere. You would come back, wake up, and your skin would head to toe be weeping. In 2 days, you'd be absolutely fine. And you'd think you'd got over it. And you'd see little patches and you'd be like, oh my God, it's coming back. And there would be no rhyme or reason as to why. I mean, I went gluten-free. I took all dairy out of my diet. Didn't eat red meat. I still don't eat red meat. I didn't eat tomatoes because they were acidic. There was still no rhyme or reason. Like, I remember I was at a wedding. My skin was really bad and I'd had a pork sausage because I was going, pork sausages, the pork isn't red meat. It is. I didn't know that. But pork is
Oh,
red.
is it?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Oh, no, me neither.
So I'm at there going, oh, it's the only thing I can eat here. The rest of it's beef. So I'm like, there, like this with these sausages. I'm not joking. My forehead just started weeping down. Just the same night at the wedding, it would just, I felt my skin and it was wet. And I was like, and I looked in the mirror and there was like droplets of it weeping. So then I was like, it's the pork. So then you don't eat pork, or you don't eat this, or you know, you try and eliminate things, but then it's something else. And this is why when you look at people's stories, it's so up and down, because they'll trial things and it'll work and they'll think they're onto something, and then it'll just come crashing back down again. There's no pattern, and that was the thing as well. There's no pattern at all. It feels like it's got a mind of its own. And I think that's why it's also very hard to find a solution, like professionally, to find a solution. The information that's out there is so varied, and you could ask people their accounts of what they did. Keep a food diary, keep a product diary, you know, X, Y, Z. And they would all be so totally different, but the topical steroid withdrawal would be the same. And this is why you can't deny that it's not a thing, because the anchoring similarity between all these people are that they have used and overused topical steroids and discarded use. That is the only anchoring similarity. Everyone's telling me topical steroid withdrawal isn't a thing. It must be something else, but it's not. It is that, and no one listens to it. No one believes you.
Why? Like, what is this reluctancy to believe it? Are there not enough studies? Is it because there's an easy solution to the beginning of it that they then don't want to fix later down? Like, what's the reason for denying it?
There's just no research into it, which is crazy, considering how much research is out there in terms of skin, and even from a cosmetic side. But also, is it because they're worried that if using steroids at a younger age, or overusing steroids at any age, means that you can't use steroids? Is that going to put more strain on, you know, finding an alternative to steroids for easy, you know, smaller things? Like if you do have a little patch of eczema and you use steroids for 2 days and then discard use, that steroid cream is fine. Use it. It works, you know. Don't be scared of it. But if you're using it every day for 20 years, that's when there may be an issue. So are they then thinking, oh God, well, we don't want to open that can of worms, because that means that if someone has got a rash, they don't want to use steroids because people are going through, you know, I don't know. But it just feels, it feels archaic the way that people think about it. And it's like, how can you say that it's not a thing? I literally sat with a 6-year-old girl who is covered in what I was going through. And I'm like, how can her mum be told that what she's going through is eczema? And it's just to put steroid cream in it and it go away. And it's covering her whole body.
Whilst I can kind of understand why doctors are struggling to deal with cases of TSW appropriately, we all know you have to be very, very careful with language, misinforming, all that kind of stuff. I don't think it justifies the often really dismissive attitude or complete lack of support that people have been reporting from their doctors when it comes to getting help with their TSW symptoms. Like James was saying, even the doctor who really kind of wanted to say, I think this is TSW, couldn't really say it. And whilst I guess it's important not to mislead or fearmonger or misdiagnose, no diagnosis, or I can't really help you with that, I think is worse. That's worse than just being like, oops, it might not be TSW, you know? Doctors can say there are issues with diagnosing and treating TSW, but in the meantime, the patients are the ones that have to live with it and deal with the consequences of taking medication that their doctors have been prescribing them for years. So how exactly do people live with TSW? What are they doing to manage their symptoms? And is there any way of getting back to normal life? This is what I had to ask James. I needed to know where he was now, like what's going on.
But for going on for that long, we're getting no answers. Again, with people not really knowing what the fuck's going on. I mean, did the people that you seeked help from seem unbothered?
He kind of treated it as eczema. Dr. Dennis Gross, right? He reached out to me. Luckily, again, what a name to be able to say.
Right.
Dr. Dennis Gross reached out to me and said, James, I need to get on FaceTime with you. which is incredible. Like, you know, I was so thankful. Every time I would speak to someone, I would see it as a lifeline. This is it. This is it. And he said to me, the only way that you're going to get back to living any kind of normal life is on steroids. And I was just like, oh, but I think steroids has caused this. And he said, I understand that. He said, all of this inflammation has stayed dormant in you from a young age. So when you had your eczema at 8 years old, you had all this inflammation inside of you. You've been suppressing it for so long that something at Glastonbury has triggered it, and it's just gone like that. Whether it be a plant, whether it be being outside, fatigue, it could be anything, but something has triggered it and all of this inflammation has come up. And he said, and the only way that you can manage that amount of inflammation, he was like, it's on 90% of your body. And the only way you can manage it is by using a tool that you know suppresses it and works for you, and then looking at how we can control it. So he put me back on steroids. It was gone for a little while. And he then said to me, you need to really work on, he said, forget your skincare, literally just grease, sit in a bath of grease, just literally cover yourself in grease all the time. He said, because you haven't got a barrier function to your skin. And also alongside all of this, he said to me, you need to be super careful with what you're wearing and where you're going. Your body is 90% open wounds, so you can get sepsis like that. And that was something I hadn't even thought of.
No.
And Dr. Dennis was like, you need to be really, really careful, because if you get that, he was like, that's again another ball game. He said, take time off work, hold all social plans. He was like, you need to really tackle this, and we need to put all we can into this. And he was that, he was amazing. He was that. I remember he was in Japan with his son. And I said to him, I messaged him about something, and he just FaceTimed me, and he was in the lobby of the hotel. He was like, I'm working in the night, it's about 1 a.m. here, are you okay? Talking, I just thought, God, how amazing is it that I've got people like that to kind of be in it, even if they're just an ear, Everyone that I spoke to said, the way that you're going to control this is through steroids. And the one thing that I think did help a lot was LED. Having LED, red light therapy, really helped. But other than that, there was nothing that anyone said or did that would help it. I eventually saw a private dermatologist, and it was before Space NK were going to take me to Vegas. Amazing opportunity. I'd just come off the steroids from what Dr. Dennis Gross. My skin was getting worse again, and I was thinking, fuck that, I am going to Vegas. I don't care. You drag me there. I am going. Ginny, who's at Space NK, was like, I don't want your skin to get worse. Please, do not feel yet like you have to come. I said, listen, I'm going to be over there with Caroline Hirons. If anything goes wrong, we've got an incredible woman there who can help us. And Ginny was like, yeah, fair enough. So, and everyone on the trip, essentially. I went to this private derm that I ended up paying for, and they said to me, we're going to have to put you on immunosuppressants because there's no way you're going to Vegas the way that you are now. He was like, you can't fly. And I was like, yeah, I can. I'm fine. He was like, you can't fly. He was like, the pressure of the flight will literally make you bleed. He was like, you will just bleed. He said, you can't go. So I was like, okay, I need to think about these immunosuppressants, because the side effects to immunosuppressants are liver failure, kidney failure, all these things. And for the longest time, I thought, no, I'm going to heal it myself. I did Chinese therapy, had acupuncture, tried all these different oils and stuff, and some things helped for a little bit, some things didn't. I was sat in a bath of grease, and I said to my boyfriend, I was like, I'm not living any kind of life here. So the only way out that I can see is these tablets that he wants to put me on. And they were something like £200 and something a month. And then I'd have to have blood test every 2 weeks and a check-in with him every week. The check-in with him is obviously money. The blood test is obviously money. And the prescription is obviously money. And I was like, fuck, I'm not even working. I'm not even working. So I was like, right, savings, got to get out my savings, because I have no other choice now. I started on these immunosuppressants. I'm still on them, and I've got to be on them forever. I now live that risk of, at any moment, I can get liver failure or kidney failure for no reason. And if I have a cold, it will bedbound me. Or if I have a night out, it will bedbound me. I can't like live the way that I was living 2 years ago. Do you know what it was for me, James? There was no end date. If someone had said to me, this is going to go on for another year and then you're clear, I'd be like, I can do it. I was seeing these stories online and people were 4 or 5 years in and they were still bedbound. I just couldn't do it. And your mind goes to like some really, really dreadful places. And you think the only way out now is topical steroids, is immunosuppressants from this topical steroid withdrawal. I'm on them and I have been on them for about 6 months. My skin still flares up. I still get like dry patches. I still get like little bits of eczema and stuff, but it's manageable. I'll never touch a steroid as long as I live. I went away. I went to London and I didn't take my tablets and my skin flared up. I'm once again masking something that is there. The alternative is that I just don't have any kind of quality of life. It's a catch-22 and it's because there is simply no research in this and people don't believe that topical steroid withdrawal is a thing. People don't think that your skin can become reliant on it. People think that it is just atopical dermatitis or eczema. And I can categorically tell you that it is very, very different. I met quite a well-known dermatologist. She was talking to me about my skin and she said, so how are you managing it now? And I said I was on cyclosporin, which is the immunosuppressant I was on, and she went, and I went, oh, what? And she was like, you know the side effects to it? I said, yeah. She was like, how are you? I was like, okay. She was like, you really need to look after yourself. I was like, I know. She was like, your diet, everything, you need to look after yourself. I was like, I know. And she said, because it could all go downhill in a matter of days. And I went, yeah. And she said, and I need to tell you that as a medical professional. I was just like, okay. And it's one of those that if I think about, I mean, you know, like, do you know what I mean? What am I meant to do? But right now, touch wood, they're working, they're fine. My skin is going to get used to them. I'm then going to have to go on an injection. I still have to have blood tests every 2 weeks. I have to have blood pressure every week and like a strict diet and stuff for the rest of my life. But we're there. I feel better. I've got a life back, you know, but it still absolutely pains me and upsets me so much that we're going through this. It's not being spoken about in mainstream news. No one wants to hear it. Dermatology appointment that I'd got, I was paying for privately. And I thought, I can't pay this money. It was something that ended up being like £600 something a month for the rest of my life. Like, it's not like I've become addicted, which again, I still think is an illness, but like I've become addicted to a substance. And then I'm, you know, I haven't done anything. I followed the advice of my medical professionals that I trust. The system has failed. The system has failed people that are going through topical steroid withdrawal. All they've done is follow the advice of their medical professionals. I wasn't getting anywhere with the NHS, and the NHS was saying it's going to be like, 16 weeks. And I thought, I can't be seeing this private derm every week for 16 weeks because it's literally, I'm going to be skin and also in debt. I'd been approached by a production company of a TV production company that wanted to do a documentary on topical steroid withdrawal. So I thought, I'm going to be that dickhead and I'm going to message the director of the NHS Northwest and say, I've been approached by these. I'm going to say yes if I don't get an appointment in 2 weeks. Lo and behold, I was sat there with an appointment in 2 weeks. And it just absolutely blows your mind to think, to save your own back, you have now got me an appointment magically. But there are people waiting 3 years for an appointment. You just can't get your head around it, you know. Like, the statistics are insane, but those 3 years are literally the difference between life and death. And when people say that skin issues and skin conditions are trivial, they're really not.
What's sad to think is that, as awful as James's story is, I use this term reluctantly, but compared to others, he's one of the luckier ones in some ways, obviously not downplaying his experience at all by saying that. It's clearly been a devastating and traumatic experience for him. But as he said himself, very few people can say they got advice from some of the biggest experts in the industry, like Caroline Hirons and Dr. Dennis Gross. And even then, it's been incredibly difficult for him to manage the condition. Just imagine trying to deal with it without that kind of support. Your doctors have failed you. Who else do you have to turn to? Not to mention that, as James said himself, treatment of TSW is expensive, particularly if you have to go to a private dermatologist, because here in the UK, it's just getting an NHS appointment. The NHS are under a lot of stress. It's next to impossible to get seen to so quickly. Like James said, seeing a private dermatologist can cost hundreds of pounds a month to be on immunosuppressants, never mind the cost of checkups, blood tests, and so on and so forth. So even if someone wanted to take immunosuppressants and was willing to accept the very worrying health risks that come along with that, not everyone can afford to do that. So then what do you do? Well, by the sounds of it, you stay bedridden and be in extreme pain and discomfort for years. And that just isn't good enough in this day and age. Something we haven't really mentioned yet is the mental toll living with this kind of condition can have on someone. James also spoke about his experience with this and the impact TSW has had on his and others' lives, as well as how infuriating it is to be told that you're wrong on your own experience time and time again.
Really sad and infuriating all at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, not gonna lie, bit like teary-eyed and emotional, because you forget how it really can destroy people's lives. Like you say, it's not just skin, it's like, and hearing what you went through, but nothing's being done. Obviously there are, a million things happening in the world right now, but we're focusing on this one topic, and this is still something that affects people all the time. The fact that nothing's being done because people are flat out saying like, this isn't a thing.
It's just wild that like 2 years ago, I was fine. And like what the hell has happened that I now have to worry about like eating certain things or like not drinking and not doing this and not doing that, because the tablets that I'm on can cause liver and kidney failure. Like what? From a skin condition that was a bit of eczema on my inside arm. It is really, really sad. It is really sad. And hearing some of the stories that people have just lost the fight with it. They have lost the mental fight with it, and that is the thing that I feel the strongest about, because I've been there. I've felt it, and I felt like there is no way out. And I was only months and months, but months in. Imagine years still going through it. It would win over me 100%. And I feel like I'm quite a strong person. So it's just so sad, and skin conditions are never trivial, ever.
It's so weird because it feels like there's no conclusion.
There is no conclusion. You're so right, James. There's no conclusion.
I feel like I'm trying to come to an end here, and there's nothing to say.
No.
Nothing.
The conclusion is, maybe educate yourself on it. Look at it online. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. I go through these phases of getting so pissed off, heartbroken, and then, feeling like I need to do something. Yeah, one time I sat at my GP and I'd got, all of my arms were weeping and they were red raw. And I sat there like this, and I was crying, and I looked at her and I said, "What do you want me to do?" And she looked back and she was like, "I genuinely don't know." I look back now and feel so sorry for her, because that is hard. Imagine someone sat there like that saying, "What do you want me? Tell me what you want me to do. How am I meant to carry on like this?" And her saying, "I genuinely don't know," because they aren't equipped with the information that they need to help resolve this. The solution that they're giving to the problem is the root of the problem. So it's only ever going to go like that. There's never going to be movement forward in that. And that is an awful situation to be in for everybody.
This isn't some trivial condition that can just be swept under the rug by the medical community. It's taking people's lives away, both figuratively and literally. Honestly, something needs to change in the way that TSW is handled by doctors, because it can't go on like this. So what exactly is happening? Is anything changing to fix this situation? And are people starting to recognize and support those suffering from TSW? Unfortunately, studies into TSW have been pretty few and far between over the last decades, despite there being reports of steroid rebound symptoms as far back back as the 1970s. What studies there have been since then have been fairly underwhelming. In 2003, a paper by dermatologist Dr. Marvin Rappaport and Dr. Mark LaBelle is often cited as one of the first major attempts to define and study TSW. They referred to the condition as red burning skin syndrome and noted that the participants all had a history of dermatitis and long-term corticosteroid use. They also found that the majority of patients studied developed the characteristic severe burning sensation associated with the condition, and that some have been treated for their symptoms with further use of topical steroids, which only made things worse. They noted that symptoms only cleared up after the use of all topical and systemic steroids had been discontinued. The paper confirmed what many clinical case reports have previously said, and it kind of helped give clinicians the words to describe the phenomenon, but this was just one paper, so it didn't change much about the way the condition was treated, and it would be more than a decade before any further notable studies were made. Until this point, most of the evidence for TSW existed as case reports, which are basically individual stories written up by doctors about certain medical cases that they've seen. In 2015, a systematic review in the Journal of American Academy of Dermatology examined the available evidence to date and concluded that topical corticosteroid withdrawal is likely a distinct clinical adverse effect of topical corticosteroid misuse, adding that patients and providers should be aware of its clinical presentation and risk factors. Though they did also point out that more evidence and formal studies were needed as the quality of the existing evidence was poor and largely observational. However, the review was still important because it helped improve recognition of the condition and made clear how important it was that more in-depth research be done. There was still no large-scale research to give the medical community confidence that TSW was a distinct condition that needed to be managed differently to the pre-existing skin conditions. But despite this, it would be almost another decade again before any noticeable progress was made. There were studies in the early 2020s that looked deeper into the actual biological mechanisms that cause TSW symptoms, as well as what duration and frequency of steroid use increased the risk. But again, they were generally reluctant to outright say that topical steroid withdrawal was its own distinct condition, again due to lack of high quality research into the topic. Though one report published recently in 2024 did advise that whether or not clinicians accept that TSW is a distinct medical condition, they still need to take patients' concerns seriously, rather than simply dismiss them as misusers or misinformed, which just adds another level of stress for the patients and pushes them to seek alternative therapies that could do more harm than good. Perhaps the most important thing the report said was that people living with TSW need to be heard and acknowledged by the medical community. There was a bit of positive news on this front in 2024 when the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency in the UK announced a new regulation requiring much clearer labeling of topical steroids in regards to their potency, and also reminded clinicians of the possibility of steroid withdrawal reactions, especially with prolonged use of high-potency topical steroids used to treat eczema. That's at least a step in the right direction, right? But the MHRA also stated that there has been little new information on TSW in terms of scientific literature, and that there is still no accepted clinical definition for these symptoms, which means that it's still basically impossible to get a diagnosis of topical steroid withdrawal here in the UK. The US is doing a little bit better actually than the UK after the National Institute of Health published provisional diagnostic criteria to help doctors distinguish TSW from severe eczema and other dermatological conditions in March of 2025. So finally, people living with a condition in the US can officially be diagnosed with it. So hopefully that will lead into more in-depth research onto the topic into TSW in the near future as a result. And hopefully the UK follows America's example, at least in this specific area, as they seem to be ahead of us here in the UK. And after researching this topic and speaking to James, I know how much it would mean to them to finally have their condition even just officially recognized and get an actual diagnosis instead of being told they're wrong about what their bodies are going through. Now, James did briefly mention to me that as far as he knows, people are going to Thailand to get treated for this. We did a little bit of research into this, and whilst we couldn't find anything, I guess you can say, what's the word here? Not legally recognized as TSW treatment. I got a little note here. In Thailand, there are a few clinics that have become well known in the TSW community for offering cold atmospheric plasma or CAP therapy. CAP is an emerging dermatology technology that uses ionized gas to help with wound healing, regeneration, and reducing microbes on the skin. Whilst it's not officially recognized as a treatment for TSW, and clinics there can't even openly advertise it as such, patients from all over the world travel to Bangkok to try it, often sharing stories of reduced redness and faster skin repair. The science behind CAP in wound healing is promising, but when it comes to TSW specifically, the evidence is still anecdotal and experimental rather than proven in clinical trials. But there have been a lot of anecdotal good evidence coming from this treatment. So that's definitely something to remember and consider. But again, I have to be very careful with what I can say is true, what I can say is anecdotal, what I can say is somebody's experience. Obviously, I'm not a doctor, I'm just presenting research, as I keep saying. I want to stress that, but I believe this is a thing. So there is still clearly a lot more work to do in terms of raising awareness of TSW, carrying out more research into it, and exploring better ways of treating and managing the symptoms that come with it, and even just treating and managing the patients. But at the very least, some things seem to be moving in the right direction, albeit across the pond and at a much slower rate than many would hope. And I'm pretty sure there are plenty of people currently suffering with TSW that are desperate for quicker progress. Unfortunately, none of us currently have a magic solution to this, and I wish we could help more, but for those who are struggling, James had a few pieces of advice that I would like to leave you with.
If someone's going through it, or think they're going through it, what do you recommend? Because I know it's all kind of been, you say, like really chaotic.
You need to put the pressure on to speak to a dermatologist. Keep ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing. And don't take no for an answer. You need to see a dermatologist. Your GP, they're incredible, but this is not their speciality. You need to see a dermatologist, number one. That dermatologist will only probably say, go back on steroids. But put your foot down. Say, I do not want to go on steroids. Keep saying it. Keep fighting with them. This is a hard one to say, but find people online that don't scare you about it. Because what you see online when you search topical steroid withdrawal is horrifying. However, there is also people out there who will show you the problems, but also still have their personality and still be themselves. Because what you see online is that it has stripped everyone. People look like they have given up. And I totally understand it, but that's so scary. And I think that stresses you out and makes it worse. So I'd 100% say, have a look online, but don't get caught up in the online space and of people hating their lives, because that is just such a dark place to be in. And I think you need to have those sort of outlets of not thinking about it, just trying to be as normal as possible. Hashtag the shit out of it. Put it on TikTok. I mean, the derm is saying to us, the derm said to me, the only way that I'd heard about this is through TikTok. She said to me, well, both of them, but I said to me, if you do one thing, document it. Because if people don't document it, no one knows it exists. And that's what you see happen. People get this, they see that themselves, their physical form has changed so much. You don't look great. You do look a bit scary. So they don't film themselves. They hide themselves. But by hiding yourselves, you're hiding the problem. Because how is anyone meant to know there's a problem if no one's talking about it? So absolutely document it.
I'm going to leave the video there because obviously James is way more qualified to give you some sound advice. Although I wish I could tell you there was some easy way to fix what you're going through if this is something you are going through. But if you are suffering with TSW, please know you are not alone. There is a full community out there online of people who believe they are suffering from TSW and are sharing their stories and support for each other. Changes are slowly starting to be made to how the condition is diagnosed and treated, and awareness of what you're going through is increasing every single day. And hopefully with that rising awareness, more research, understanding, solutions won't be that far behind.